The Dialogues Across the Seas project started in 2018 with the aim of promoting a constructive transdisciplinary dialogue regarding the climate impact on marine environments. In 2021, the United Nations proclaims a decade of ocean science for sustainable development to pursue solutions and to foster connections among people through the oceans and the seas. Water is a prevalent chemical compound on Earth. The theory of biogenesis posits that life originating on Earth in primordial liquids, likely on the ocean floor. But water is intrinsically linked to life. Plants, animals, and microorganisms consist of a minimum of 50% water. Oceans and seas play a fundamental role in Earth's climate cycle, since they absorb about a quarter of the CO2 emissions produced by human activities, one of the main causes of the greenhouse effect and global temperature rising. This increases the volume of water and consequently the level of ocean and seas, submerging coastal areas and islands. Seas and oceans have consistently served as both obstacles to human movements and conduits linking disparate and remote cultures. Sea levels, which have fluctuated over millennia, and glaciations have facilitated migrations, enabling Homo sapiens to traverse continents and establish settlements. Through history, seas and oceans have served as barriers of geographical separation while simultaneously fostering cultural, historical, social and economic connections among people and nations. This is especially applicable to coastal settlements and urban areas that rely heavily on maritime resources and associated activities. Currently, technology of distance, such as the Internet, facilitate connections among cultures and individuals. However, for centuries, boats and oceans served as long-distance communication systems, enabling travel beyond the limitations of terrestrial routes. Maritime routes have existed since the inception of human civilization, facilitating the exchange of goods and ideas across the seas, linking disparate peoples, fostering shared knowledge, and establishing social, economical, and cultural dialogues. But they have also produced profoundly negative action and behaviors. Colonization has oppressed native populations, subjugating, plundering, and annihilating their cultures. Recently, mass migration have compelled millions to traverse seas and oceans at great personal risk due to climate, political, and economic challenges in pursuit of more favorable living conditions. In addition to surface navigation, dialogues across the sea also occur due to the extensive nature of submarine cables laid on the seabed, which enable data transmission. Today, a significant amount of information circulates through these channels worldwide, enabling communication among continents, nations, cities, cultures, and individuals. The importance of these networks in our present age of uncertainty and conflict is demonstrated by the persistent sabotage to undermine them and hinder dialogues. An additional significant aspect pertains to maritime trade routes. Today, approximately 80% of goods are transported by sea. However, many regions globally are experiencing conflict, rendering certain routes challenging or unfeasible. Consequently, longer and slower routes must be used that impact economies and cultures. Finally, climate change-induced transformations can affect maritime connections, creating new pathways. The melting of extensive Arctic ice regions has rendered the northern polar navigation route technically viable, shortening the distance between continents and regions, along with all associated negative issues. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is Elena Giulia Rossi, and I would like to talk a little bit about climate visions, matter, agency, and trust. And this means to talk about language as an interface and as an active agent from which to move in all directions in the entanglement between matter, agency, and the whole, between the ground and the atmosphere, and through the conductive power of water. In the journey that has taken us from 2018, when Luigi Capucci started the dialogues across the sea in Cervia, the world has changed, but mostly it has changed the way we look at the world and the trust we placed in images, a trust that is undermined by the ubiquitous use of images and languages produced by artificial intelligence. But we leave this discourse aside for a moment, and we stop to consider the language of climate as a microcosm of cultural meaning, to use Mitchell's words. And this is true for images and information that belongs to science, as well as for artistic projects that work with data provided by science. Copernicus is the European Union's Earth Observation Programme, is a scientific source for initiative of the European Space Agency and the European Commission, created in 2001. And Copernicus has radically shifted the way of delivering scientific information from an indisputable and unidirectional source to an open platform. By providing real-time satellite imagery and environmental data, this open source platform enabled people to deciding to take in decisions about climate change. And this has fostered scientific collaboration, and it has empowered communities to proactively address environmental challenges. Scientific data that are provided for meteorological forecasts can generate new narratives, such as the one of open weather, a feminist experiment by designer and researcher Sophie Dyer and academic geographer Sasha Engelman. Open weather builds new narrative from all kinds of information, traveling on different layers of frequencies, using DJ kits, software, and antennas, all open source. And these images become part of an embodied knowledge, where bodies are physically connected to the atmosphere through the antennas, as they have to be moved in the air until they are tuned to the radio waves that comes from the satellite. The body is central to this practice, and it reconnects atmosphere, ground, data, images into a single whole. From the atmosphere without into the seas, into the oceans, where the language of climate can settle with equal force in artistic narratives, such as the one of the film by Maria Grazia Pontorno, Golden Moon of the Nobilis, that combines poetic vision with science to tell the story of the Pinna nobilis, the largest mollusk of the Mediterranean that is about to be extinct by a pandemic disease. From this Pinna nobilis is extracted a byssus, which is a sacred thread that is extracted from the mollusk in a combination of craftsmanship and esoteric practice. A film, an artistic narrative, has brought together science and anthropology and art, and it was shot one part in Valencia around a group of scientists that are engaged in the project Life Pinarca, that have been looking for solutions to fight the extinction of the Pinna nobilis, and another part was shot in Sant'Antioco in Sardinia, where Chiara Vigo lives. She is the last priestess of the byssus, and she knows this mollusk better than anyone else in the world. From Copernicus to the Pinna nobilis, we have noticed how language in any form is capable of bridging embodied knowledge and bridging the atmosphere to the ground, and then deep into the ocean, and then back to the earth. And so well they have expressed this concept, Parikka and Gilles, in their recent publication, Living Surfaces, Images, Plants and Environmental Media, when they say that images generate actions and reactions that are then rewritten in the ecosystem, leaving their traces on surfaces such as the atmosphere, water, and plants. Now, the thing is that trust has always played a central role, even if an invisible role in the impact of images. And relocating trust will probably be central in any imagined process of regeneration. Thank you very much.
Ia ora tātou. Greetings everyone, and welcome to this presentation on an Indigenous contribution to the history of diffraction. So Nauru whenua is a type of diffractive wave pattern that is caused by current downstream of an island and known by traditional non-instrument navigators. Young drew diffractive waves in 1803. You can find them in water, sound, and the wave particle duality of light. Haraway developed a feminist diffractive method, which Barrard then applied to quantum theory in an interdisciplinary context. The question is, at what point were traditional navigators aware of diffractive patterns in the ocean? So I will first review Magellan or Marshall Islands' traditional navigation methods, then look to radiocarbon dating and DNA records to locate an appropriate timing. Here we have a Magellan Island stick chart, which is not taken on board. It's a theoretical tool. But basically, if you are sailing from the island at bottom, or south, up to the one at north, and you have a current coming from the right hand side or the east, then you'll need to sail like this, which is to say you sail into the current and then the current will push you back to the island. Here we have an explanation of currents given by Spenneman, an Australian academic. I just want to point out area E, which is where the current at D on either side of the island meet. Now this is what diffraction looks like in the ocean off the coast of Aotearoa. And here we can see in these tracks made by waka or canoe, sailing using traditional methods from the Marquesas to Hawaii in 1995. There are 6 of them, and you can see they've done much the same thing. Sailed into the current so that they will be pulled across towards their target island. Here's Young's well-known drawing of diffraction in water, and here we can see diffraction in a rather well-known diagram on wave-particle duality. Let's now see if we can use radiocarbon dating to establish a time frame for when navigators must have known about Nauru whenua diffractive wave patterns. If we pay attention to the dark blue lines, we can, which are class 1 samples, the most reliable, we can see that the authors concluded that dispersal continued in one major pulse from around 1190 to 1290. If we look into the Native American and Polynesian gene flow record, we can see here this quite bright pink or magenta colour indicates interaction between people of the South Marquesas and the Zapotec in current day Guatemala in 1150 of the Common Era. And as you can see, between 1150 and 1380, there were multiple contacts, in particular with Colombia 3 times in the DNA record over that period. So what are the results? We can conclude that around 1150 to 1190 of the current era is a period that navigators must have known of the Nauru Whenua diffraction wave pattern. As we saw on the title slide, there are also 3,000 years of documented moana navigation from Samoa and Fiji through to eastern Polynesia. So what can we conclude? First, this research on diffraction applies in the fields of quantum science, feminist studies, indigenous studies, DNA and radiocarbon dating papers, and arts and cultural practices based on those fields. What I'm suggesting is that we all include in handouts and presentations this history or heritage of diffraction. Thank you very much.
Cervia is a center located at the edge of a conifer forest spanning along the northeast coast of Italy. It lies between the sea and a small-sized salt pan. The area is the residence of a great number of birds such as seagulls, black-winged stilts, avocets, herons, shelducks, and the beloved pink flamingos. As well, it is the home of extremophiles such as sea asparagus. The city is part of a constellation of towns unraveling along the coast that are known for their entertainment business, active throughout the year. The tourist industry and the rich ecosystem do not often get along. The desire to protect the unique natural environment of the region does not agree with the economic survival of its hospitality industry. Ecotourism is at odds with the development of more tourist structures, and yet these structures are needed to welcome ecotourism. In the summer 2018, I observed the strange relationships between the two words. Field recording and photo documentation revealed the daily intersection of human and non-human animals, bacteria, plants, and other objects existing in and outside the forest, on the beach, and in the salt pan. Together, they formed messy, complicated, and symbiotic ecologies. At the salt pan, I observed critters and birds getting busy and organizing their day, their chattering deafening. At the beach, I soaked in the cacophony of announcements and kids happily playing. I found salt in the sand and among the bushes, pine needles in the water, debris of construction work, and kids' toys mixed with microorganisms floating on the surface of salt formation. In May 2023, an intense weather system hit the region. Rivers flooded, submerging entire villages. Families lost their homes and businesses. The salt pan mitigated the violence of the flood and saved the city of Cervia, absorbing agricultural waste and chemicals, sewage water, thorn branches, and other waste. The salt pan was turned into a freshwater lake. With the tourist industry trying to get back on their feet before the summer season, all efforts focused on economic recovery and on primary human necessities. When would tourists swim in the sea again? When would the salt pan be rebuilt? I went back to Cervia to document the aftermath of the flood. The still undrained freshwater lake hosted many birds already. However, how many of them had perished? How many eggs had been lost in the flood? How many small crustaceans and microorganisms had been poisoned by the bacteria-ridden sewage water that had poured into the newly formed lake. There are no data to document such loss. Economic damages, such as those to homeowners or companies, are well documented because they are quantifiable and are favorite of short-sighted political agendas. Damage to animals, microfauna, and natural areas receive far less attention. Without studies at a multi-scale levels and any consideration of the many overlapping factors and actors involved in the crisis, it is neither possible to assess the immediate damage nor to make plans for long-term strategies of resilience. Amitav Ghosh observes that freak events, flash storms, and other sudden shifts in the weather have become a frequent occurrence in many parts of the world. However, our cultural and economic system is unable to adapt to this new normal. The resulting loss of perceived control translates into an inability to cope and even to speak of it. Our storytelling traditions are not prepared to deal with it. We are stuck in an infinite loop of empty rhetoric and wishful thinking. In October 2024, another bizarre weather system hit some of the same region. Once again, villages went underwater, businesses were lost, the natural environment invisibly transformed. But this time, when interviewed, some of the victims were no longer demanding a rebuild. We cannot go back to a pristine state, they said. How do we make peace with the plants, the environment, the animals? How do we create a dialogue across cultures, across waters, across histories, so that we can look ahead and find resilience?
Wunya, and hello everyone. My name is Tracey Benson, and I would like to thank the other presenters for their very stimulating ideas and projects. I'd like to start by paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands where I live, the lands of the Jundaburi people, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour their deep connection to country over thousands of generations. Now, this is really important to me, not just as a cultural practice in Australia, but Jundaburi country and Kabi Kabi Nation, the nation nearby, is actually very close to where I was born. So I live here on Bribie Island, and just across the bay, you can see there's Bribie. I was born in Redcliffe. So after many years away, I've returned, and these are the waters of my birth. And even though I've been working with water for a very long time, it seemed to be very important to really deeply explore my family connection over many generations to this place, and its Indigenous history and its environmental values, which are very rich, and also the fact that it's a tourism playground with lots of threatened species of plants and animals, and dugongs, of course. So it is very much a sanctuary for wildlife. And for this reason, we initiated the project Weaving Water in 2023, and that was hosted at a local retreat centre here on the coast side of the island. Weaving Water was built on the shoulders of some other wonderful projects, and there were lots of public events as part of this program, as well as a lot of participants who have long-standing relationships to each other and to me personally. So that was a really beautiful aspect together, was weaving together different cultural and disciplinary knowledges and relationships over many, many years. So just to sort of situate this within the timeline, that was 2023, and it really built on over a decade of exploration and creative research into water, starting for me personally around 2013 with the beginning of a generative collaborative project called Words for Water. Through my association with Intercreate, as a trustee, along with Nina and Pasha, who have already presented, there are a number of events that Intercreate facilitated along those years. In 2021, my organisation, Treecreate, partnered with Supercluster to present a 2-week educational and creative program called Meeting Oceania, and that was held during COVID, and we had 36 participants from around the world. So all of these programs all contributed to the ideas that were at the heart of weaving water at Yarran. In particular, the connection to Tangata Whenua, or people of the land, so preferencing First Peoples' knowledge of country, and then also working across different disciplines to honour place, culture, and with an awareness of the climate impacts that we are all facing. So Weaving Water continues with programs happening in 2025, and it's with those themes that we continue working on our connections and our collaborations and our dialogues across the waters, with another program in Yarran and one in Vanuatu. And this is our Vanuatu host, Sandy Sir. So just in closing, I think often of the water as being an element that both links us together and also links all life together. So it is also a way of thinking about how we are connected rather than estranged or isolated from each other. And we need to think like this in order to actually deal with the problems we are facing right now. And I think Indigenous knowledge is really the pathway for us to do that. So thank you very much for your time.